Well, thank you for joining us for this session. We talked about it a little bit last night when we announced the finalists here and our winner. So I would just ask again that you join me in congratulating these honorees, as well as all the participants from the program. And I know that we have a number of supporters who've either been past participants or mentors or current participants and mentors. If you would, please stand so that others can recognize your involvement as well. And thank you. Thank you for your commitment. It means a lot to participants to have support and people that they can learn from, and it means a lot as mentors to be able to connect with these rising ideas and people who will shape the future of our industry. So thank you. You're not here to hear from me, though, so it's very great that all of the topics that have been chosen are of strong relevance to the industry. I think they'll tie well with topics we've even already heard about today. As we can connect to how AI will work in concert with humans, how partnerships between public and private can enhance the resilience of society to natural catastrophes, and how people work in growing and changing environments. So without further ado, I will ask the honorees to introduce themselves and the topic that they chose as with their hat on as a CEO of why this is important to the industry and why it was personally important to them. So for this, we'll just go directly left to right. Robin, if you want to start.
Yeah, thanks. And also thanks for the opportunity of being here. It's a great pleasure. I'm Robin, working for McKinsey, doing my work mostly in commercial lines and reinsurance topics. The topic I chose was about public-private partnerships, and what I mean with this is how to bring the insurance industry of a nation together to partner with the private sector to bring a solution to cover losses from net cat events, being it floods, being it earthquakes, being it wind. And I chose this topic because it's a great challenge for the industry to, on the one hand side, balance underwriting profitability, earning the cost of capital for the insurer, while on the other hand side, providing affordable protection for the society. And with that, insurance has a huge impact on where and how people live in the future. And the insurance industry with the risk maps, risk modeling capabilities, can step up this role as being a leader in society to really make sure we can live with climate change, not today, but also in the future.
All right. So I'm Sue Lim. I'm the Regional Business Development Director at AIA, which means that I work at the Regional CEO's office, supporting our Regional CEO in terms of looking after our business operations in Indonesia, Australia, and also India. I actually wrote my research paper on a topic that's quite personal to me, which was, will human advisors actually survive the age of AI? And I chose this topic because, I've been given an opportunity to explore questions and topics that I had in the back of my mind ever since I've entered this industry almost a decade ago. And what's really been interesting for me in the past decade is that, and it's just not the past decades, past multitudes of decades, that how little has changed in terms of our approach to life distribution sales is. Despite what we've seen in terms of, online banking, in terms of payments, in terms of even general insurance, where transacting online and digital is really part of the norm. And we've seen a meteoric rise in terms of robo-advisory, in terms of wealth management. Really, in life insurance, we're still very much human dependent, whether it's tied to agency, bank insurance consultants, independent financial advisors or brokers. I mean, on one hand, it's great that we are building that human connection and relationship with our clients, but on the other hand, it does come with high costs, and literally in terms of commissions and overrides, but also in terms of, our ability to scale the potential outreach to our potential customers. And actually what's been quite puzzling to me is that despite what all our customer surveys and focus groups say about our consumers wanting to buy life insurance online and the technology and channel already being available, we haven't really seen this channel really been taken off. And actually, why is distribution one of the toughest challenges whenever we want to launch a new proposition or even think about new ways to serve our customers? And I think this is a question that's not just only about business or logistical, it's almost an existential question actually for our industry. And if we can't actually broaden access and also increase penetration in terms of broader public society, is life insurance going to be relevant actually for our future generation? And if emerging technologies such as generative AI or agentic AI could be part of that solution, and not saying that that's going to be the only solution, it can be one of the key enablers. I think this is probably an area we have to put our collective mindset and focus into.
Okay, wow. Hi, I'm Anne-Catherine. Thank you for being here. It's very much appreciated. Super interesting panel discussions this morning. I work for Gallagher Re, and I have a sort of two-folded position. I'm part of the management team for the German-speaking areas, and on the other hand, I look at international casualty as part of a practice group to bring the world together and discuss emerging topics and approaches there. The topic I chose is very wide and not so, well, I wouldn't say not so detailed, but it's about human people. It's called the growth imperative and appraisal. And I chose it because I feel at the very moment, for me personally, this is the overarching topic. Every company seems to wanting to grow. All of the clients I'm talking to are have growth on the agenda. Most reinsurers want to grow, and of course the broking houses. And me working for Gallagher, I can see a big transition. The previous owner, Willis Re, didn't really have growth on the agenda as much. And with the new ownership now, sky is the limit. So that's the attitude, and it's very exciting, but it is a change. And as we've heard multiple times earlier, change is difficult, and I can see it in the people who work in this field, who work in my team. They have question marks, they have concerns, some voice them, others maybe not. So I wanted to take the time away and really think about what does it mean, and I've looked at it from a people's perspective. What does it mean for the workforce? What's in it for them? Because we asked them to grow, right? This was a big task. It's a mindset shift, really, for the company I'm working for. So it's a difficult one, and I wanted to explore the pitfalls. What are the risks when we pursue growth, and ultimately, obviously, coming up with some ideas on how to make it better and how to help guide also the team I'm working for. And I think that is a topic that should probably be a priority for everyone, because as I've learned from your paper, and we've touched upon this also yesterday a little bit, AI is hopefully here to stay, and it's hopefully bringing a lot of great transitional value. But at the same time, we still require human capital. We need us people. We need judgment. We need vision. And so it's important to look after the people, because we live in a war of talent. We've heard it decades ago, and now we're right in it. And we're no longer living in a Victorian era. We can, let our people work 16 hours a day, 6 times a week. So we have to look after them, because they choose where they work. They don't have to stay at the current company where they are. So I think it's important to find that balance and to help them develop and go on this journey.
So hopefully you can see how relatable these topics are and direct connections. We heard about cautions of growth this morning as well, and I think we experienced some of the same challenges you're describing at our company too. And same with AI, same with how to address protection gaps. So let's dig in a little further. And Salim, let's start with you. Your paper highlights the irreplaceable value of human advisors in building trust, also something we've heard about, navigating complexity and prompting action. But you're also really seeing a future where the AI agents can do a lot of the work, from prospecting to really nurturing those relationships with engagement. So what are the specific aspects of the human touch that are going to be really irreplaceable? And then which ones are going to be most vulnerable to AI disruption, in your view?
I think that's a great question. And if I have to venture a guess, and this is with a big disclaimer, I say it really boils down to three things in terms of the irreplaceable value of human in terms of the sales process. I think first is that ability to generate genuine trust and empathy. I think second, in terms of prompting action. And third is delivering complex advice. And first, in terms of when we're thinking about, we as humans are social creatures at its heart. And something being about heard and be seen actually by another human being, it's actually inexplicably builds trust in our consumers. And we've seen actually in surveys and research reports that where nearly 80% of our customers actually trust a financial brand more when they actually have a live in-person interaction. And I think this is especially true in life insurance, where the sales process is quite emotional. It's a long-term commitment, and the process can be quite complicated. And in terms of prompting action, and I think this is an area where humans do it far more effectively than machines. And when we think about it, it's a parallel example could be in-person school versus online education. And we probably agree that for mass majority of students, they get a far better learning outcome in actually being in an in-person school. And that's because teachers are in the physical room, engaging with the students and prompting action. Yeah. And I think that same actually goes for sales processes and also in life insurance. And in terms of delivering more complex advice, I think it might be changing in a couple of years, but as of this moment, I think it's still, we have very limited training sets and data sets to really deliver really complex advice and work planning in terms of a really messy personal situation where you have to deliver very nuanced or even creative advice. And I think in these cases, it'll be a lot easier for humans to deliver these kind of advices. But on the flip side, if we think about the more areas where it's more vulnerable to AI disruption, I think it will be all the processes that surround these key moments of truth. I think two areas in particular. First will be around customer education and outreach, and second will be more about device preparation. And in terms of customer education and raising awareness, I think this is an area where machines or AI can do a far better job than actual humans. They could deliver personalized, accurate information in far more immediately and far more scalably, actually before any of the purchases. And if we can combine actually the customer education with outreach, I think that could be a really exciting area to generate warm, scalable leads. And in terms of advice preparation, I think this is an area where we're already seeing actually pilots and experiments done by existing companies in terms of generating more tailored new business, sales illustrations, generating actually different options to look at for the customers and giving actually preliminary recommendations. And this is an area where I'm hoping it could also solve a lot of our past headaches around distribution, especially around addressing mis-selling risk. If we can somehow find a way for our distributors to more reliably use these AI tools to give more standardized, more high-quality advice, I think that will go a long way in terms of rebuilding trust in terms of financial advice in the life insurance industry.
Yeah. So it could be a powerful combination. Then if you've got the scale
right.
of the human with the power of the reliability and the speed of
And the more
support
standardization.
behind it. Yeah, and it seems the human piece really comes down to, it was mentioned last night as well, the relationship, the ability to connect with a person. Yeah. Which takes us to how important employees are in the journey. If this hopeful future is successful, we could see growth. We could see better ability to serve broader needs, to at least attempt to close the protection gap further. And so that could lead to growth. And so you're cautioning, Anne Catherine, that expanding workforces can threaten company culture. So what are those warning signs that leaders should be looking for as their company is growing, and how can they preserve their organization's identity?
Right. That's a complicated question, big answer. Trying to simplify that maybe. So I think warning signs, the easiest that we can detect is everything that's based on data, right? We can do pulse surveys, employment engagement surveys, however you want to call it. But if those come out negative, that's arguably a little late. You can still turn around a company, but it's incredibly harder at that stage. You could look at turnaround of staff in certain departments, but again, potentially a little late. You can look in those companies who track hours or the markets where that's regulated, and you have to see how people are overworked and where they're doing a bit more. But maybe, it brings you a little closer real time, but not really. You can look at unstructured data, like exit interviews. You can read in between the lines, and you can probably detect a couple of themes. But I think the really, and unfortunately complex and sort of hard answer to that is that if you really want to look at early warning signs, it's observing behavior and it's observing speech. And like to give you a few examples, and I'm sure a lot of people came across that in their career, is say you want to grow, you still need to hire a lot of people despite AI, I guess. And how integrated are they? Are the new hires standing amongst themselves, or are they integrated and part of the team? Post-merger, is there an us versus them mentality, or do they work together? Do people reminisce of the old times, or is so great at that company, failing to use new company terminology, or to use the new name even sometimes. So that's the kind of stuff that you can observe. And I think for that you need to be really on the ground. You need to have a good management team at every level to observe that, and a healthy relationship to be able to report that upwards so you can take action, and not being afraid to report that upwards as well. And I guess that's leading into the second question that you had around how can we preserve that. Having that feedback loop, I think is very important. And probably all of the companies here in this room have some sort of core values, whatever name you give them. And I think they're great, and if you reach a certain size, you have to have them written down. It needs to be codified. But I don't believe that culture scales with slogans. It scales with actions, and it scales with decisions and systems and incentives. And I think that is something that's very important. If you're the leaders, the managers, if you walk the talk, people look up to you. It's an interesting psychological relationship between an employee and the leader. It's almost like a parent figure sometimes, whether you like it or not. So whatever you do, it influences the people on the floor. So by taking action and coming up with hard decisions to preserve the culture, say you want to hire, there's this one person who you know is really, really good and who delivers. should you hire them or not, even though you know there might be a little bit of elbow action and you actually value teamwork? And if you then take that hard decision and say, you know what, I don't want to have this in my company, I don't want to set this example, then that goes a long way, I would say. And you can, all of that behavioral things you can put into your goals. You can measure it to a certain extent. So I think there's many ways to keep it in check.
Yeah. And that's back to there's a human touch in the leadership as well, right? It would be very difficult for AI to replace there as well. You have to hear the stories. You have to see them in action, and it's what's tolerated as well as what's encouraged. Makes a lot of sense. And look for a company, for us all to grow. We all know the pace of growth in the insurance industry. The protection gap is critically important. And so let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about, Robin, your topic is exactly around how do we address a gap that exists out there for natural catastrophe coverage. And so these public-private partnerships sound very complex. So what are some of the key design elements that are going to shape them and make them successful?
Yeah. Well, especially if it comes to the details, there's a lot of design choices you would need to think of. But I would like to point out 3, which I guess really would make the difference. The first one is, if you design a public-private partnership to cover a protection gap, making a step back and asking the question, is this a risk-driven or an economically driven protection gap? So is it really because people living in high-risk areas, or is it because of low income? This will fundamentally shape the public and private responsibilities to solve this protection gap. It becomes then very tricky if both is combined. So if low-income people live in high-risk areas because that's the only part where they can afford living. However, these are the extreme versions, so being a risk-driven and a low-income-driven protection gap, which you need to think of first. A second one is how you want to link the public-private partnership to mitigation. So ultimately, you want to reduce or remove the risk at all. So it could mean that if you provide coverage under a public-private partnership, this would be linked to necessary retrofitting investments. It could also mean that this policy is tied to a certain time period until you receive coverage in a high-risk area, but you need to relocate after a certain point of time. And in the extreme version, you could even say, you have a coverage, and if there is a flood, an earthquake, rebuilding will only be allowed in a low-risk area. I mean, these are very extreme versions, but thinking about how these public-private partnerships should help not only in providing coverage, but also reducing the risk in the long run. That would be the second one. The third key design choice would be about how to spread the risk or share the risk among insurers on the private side, but also on the public side. And again, here you have extreme version to choose between. We see a version in Norway where there is really a pooling of risks. So all losses from these public-private partnerships are shared equally among market shares across insurers, which means that the risk stays almost totally in the private sector, while you can have the other version where the public sector actually steps in as an ultimate risk bearer. Obviously, this helps to really reduce the tail risk for the insurer and to reduce pricing, but also transfer risk away from the private market, which is a choice we as the insurance industry should be thinking of. I think these are the 3 really differentiating questions, and obviously there could be a long list of another question like how do we price, how do we give subsidies, is it mandatory, is it not mandatory? But I don't want to go on, but these three, I think, are really key.
And I think that's a really interesting question, because whenever we actually see the world right now, and it's not just only really the developed countries getting hit with national catastrophes and big extreme weather events, it's also a lot of developing countries, and arguably more so that they get impacted a lot more. So how would you kind of like see that these emerging developing countries can actually provide the infrastructure and the system to have this public-private partnerships?
Yeah, I mean, this challenge is
Right.
among the developed and underdeveloped countries,
Right.
basically the same. In the end, it will depend on how the insurance industry will be able to organize themselves and to engage then with the government. And then on the less developed countries, I guess there's another problem really to how to bring this public-private partnerships policy or the policy itself to the end customer, which is another challenge in this case.
Yeah. So with so many choices, let me just build a little further if I can. How would you suggest the insurance industry organize and engage with governments?
Yeah. I think public and private sector are fundamentally different in some key aspects.
Yeah.
So the public sector often spends or has a budget which they allocate to spend, but they are not tied to make forward-looking reserve building like we as an industry like to do. And on the other hand side, on the public sector, responsibles and stakeholders are changing with every political cycle, and also political priorities change with public attention. So if there's a flood, public sector might be more willing to investigate a public-private partnership. For this reason, the insurance industry in a country should organize themselves, for example, orchestrated by a national insurance association, and then develop a rather concrete option for a public-private partnership and to bring this to government. So to basically present an already almost implementable solution to a complex problem the government can more or less choose from. And to add on this, I think it's also key to engage with government early on, so already in the election cycles, that they can bring those kind of national coverage into their election propositions, and then also do or reserve budgets for this kind of protection.
Yeah. It would seem like aligning interests, right, and communicating how the interests align is a really critical part of how you bring all of that together. And I think coming back to your topic then, Anne Catherine, you made a statement that is pretty provocative and a little scary. Growth for growth's sake is the ideology of the cancer cell. So aligning interests, again, seems very important. What, in your view, is the best way to manage around growth and being able to fuel innovation as opposed to realize the risk?
So that wasn't, I didn't say that. I can't take credit for that. Somebody else, but the name escaped me now. I found that quote, and I thought it was very interesting because it makes you stop in your tracks and think, what are we actually doing here, and why are we doing this? And I think growth as such is neutral, is energy. I think that's a nice metaphor. It can be good or bad, negative or positive. And it's all about how the organization absorbs it, how the systems, the leadership takes it in. And if growth makes you stretch your organization to a certain point, not so much that it snaps, then it's good because it challenges the people and it inspires the people. But if it goes the other way or it's just getting too much, then people will feel overwhelmed and disconnected. So I think, if growth is connected to a mission, that's great. If growth is the target in itself, that is where the danger lies, where it can become toxic. Because at the end of the day, and we've touched upon this today and also yesterday, why are we doing this all? And I love that you wrote a paper on the protection gap, because why are we venturing into new markets? Why are we launching a new product? Hopefully not because it makes money, hopefully because we think we can add a value to the people, because that's the very essence of insurance, and I think that's what's great about it.
Yeah, back to alignment of interests.
Yeah.
Right? There has to be a value proposition, but also a need. And
connect
comes
to like a
together.
higher purpose.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the purpose is incredibly important.
Absolutely.
So funny-wise, last week there was a lunch with a client on Friday, and one of our graduates joined. And as you know, you get asked, so how did you end up in this industry? And it was a question many people asked yesterday. He said, well, I sort of just fell in it, like many of us do, right? Yeah. And he was talking about his parents and what they do, and he mentioned his father is a firefighter. And you can sense him being proud, but at the same time, there was a bit of an internal conflict, and like, oh, I'm in insurance. But I reflected on this, and I thought, yeah, okay, we don't run into the burning house and save grandma and the cat. But we, once the fire is put out, we, when you feel hopeless and lost, and you look at the damage of your life, we're here to assess it and fix it. And I think this is an incredible formidable course.
Absolutely, absolutely. But it's hard for us to tell our story, I think. We realize it when we're in it. I have the same experience, right? I didn't appreciate what I was getting into, but you realize it once you're in it, what a difference you make fundamentally. And yet, life insurance ownership, Selim, your paper highlights life insurance ownership, so now we'll switch over to the other protection gap. It's down from 59% in the 60s to just 34% today per LIMRA. So your paper is looking at, can distribution models, can they evolve enough to reverse the trend? So what's your forecast based on your research for the future of life insurance distribution and its ability to address the protection gap?
I think that's a really difficult question.
Yes, it is.
And if I had a crystal ball, I'd be very rich actually by now. But if I have to really venture more of an educated guess, I think what might happen in a really longer time horizon is that we're probably going to be seeing more of a two-track distribution model in the longer term, similar to what we have seen in banking and also wealth management. I think where, in terms of the retail customer segment, we'll probably see and figure out a way how to serve these customers in a more systematic, more automated, a bit more transactional, to be very honest, way, with more minimal kind of human interventions to kind of push the sales purchases along the way. But in terms of when we're thinking about more the higher net worth, legacy planning, or more complex needs, I think there's going to continue to be a really strong demand for more high-touch, tailored advice. And I don't think that's going to be going away. So I don't think it's going to be more about, is it all digital or all humans? It will be about more trying to find the right mix depending on each of the customer segments. But in terms of when we think about more the near term, I think what's going to be more practical, and I think we're probably seeing this already, is that we're trying to be a lot more effective and trying to give a lot more support to our existing traditional distribution channels to be more effective. And I think key here is how to continue to maintain, quote unquote, this human veneer over a more automated, more digital, more AI-powered kind of machine and system underneath it. I think that's going to be probably a more, practical choice, at least in the next few years. But to be honest, I think evolving distribution and reimagining it is going to be only one part of the equation, because the other part of the equation is that we must actually actively stimulate consumer demand in the broader public society. And I think in here, we probably need to change a bit of the social discourse and a bit of a public conversation around insurance ownership and literacy. And I think one interesting actually development is that, and it's certainly true in my peers and my family members, is that people are starting to use more and more kind of AI chatbots, whether it's ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity for personal financial advice. And I think that's really interesting, because if you can really find a way to come together as an industry, launch public media campaigns around insurance ownership and literacy and why it matters, and so that these concepts can be fed into these AI chatbot conversations, I think that could be quite powerful. And if you can especially transform the societal heuristic about insurance, because in personal budgeting, you have this 50, 30, 20 kind of rule. If you can kind of change that to 50, 20, 10, 10, or 50, 25, 20, or 5, or whatever, in terms of you need to understand why you want to allocate 5% or 10% of your income into insurance product, and if that is more broadly accepted in the society, I think that's going to be where we're going to be seeing the real change, along with the reimagined distribution.
So some old challenges along with new.
That's right.
Yeah, but our theme today has been around a really transforming industry. And what you all have talked about imagines challenges going forward. We've also heard about how it takes different skills. I think Andreas mentioned this earlier. It's a different skill and mindset to really reimagine versus sort of incrementally improve. So just to leave our leaders here today with something to take away, if our long-term success really hinges on our talent at the end of the day, because it takes talent and leaders to drive forward this high-performing and future-ready workforce and organizations, what advice do you have to them for attracting and retaining the best talent to take us forward into the future? And Catherine, we'll start with you this time.
I think I'm gonna go with or build on what I said earlier. I think it's about where you also mentioned purpose. And I think we need to reinstill that. We need to shift the focus more onto this. And there's a study from, I think it was PwC, who looked at why people who looked at what people are looking for in their job. And for the baby boomers and Gen X, they look for job security, they look for financial stability. Millennials and what's the other one, Gen Z, on the other hand, they look for that sense of purpose in their day-to-day life. And I can very much relate to that all. And when I read this, I thought, yeah, I always knew this is what it is, because I grew up in the eastern part of Germany, and my parents experienced how the wall came down and how a lot of companies went bankrupt afterwards. And they experienced unemployment. So for them, job security is of utmost importance. And when I ventured into the business, and I've done an apprenticeship when I was 18, and after that was finished, I was offered a job, and I said no to it. And my parents, my whole family, it was a big thing. They thought I'm absolutely mad to do that, because it's stable income, it's a good company, you work, I don't know, 37.5 hours regulated in Germany. That's like a lottery win for them. So they could not comprehend what I'm doing there. Sorry, now I'm getting distracted. But so is that purpose that really resonates with the younger generation and my generation? I'm a millennial, I'm an elderly millennial, but still. So I think we need to shift it back to that. And I think marketing is so strong. Words are strong, storytelling is strong. And it's not just one company that should be doing it. It should be a collective effort. But I think with that, it is possible to attract talent and when we walk the talk, also retain that talent. If you can feel this purpose, maybe not on a daily basis, because we still have to look at spreadsheets and everything, but to just keep it in the back of our minds what we're actually doing here.
Very good.
All right. So I'll probably shift a little bit of a gear to talk about, how to attract talent and more the digital transformation, more the innovation, and frankly, AI space these days. My kind of thought on this is it's probably not going to be really practical to hire your way into AI success. And that's because we're just seeing a massive war on talent across different sectors, and also globally also as well. So you're not going to be able to find people probably probably a budget that you can afford. So I think what's going to be a little bit more practical is to find people in your organization with the right mindset and really proactively upskill them. And as part of that, actually, what I would suggest is to make some target investment in strong technologists who really understand the nuances of these emerging technology and will keep up with it, because they will be the ones who will establish the right infrastructure, establish the solid principles around it, so to avoid fragmentation and duplication, which is kind of everywhere right now, and work with the leaders to build a compelling vision for the rest of the organization to follow. But I think what the real leverage will be is to find the people in the organization who has the right mindset, who's continuously curious, continuously wants to learn, and also really solve the pain points that they see every day. And that's, I think, where we're going to really see a big, delta in terms of trying to really proactively attract and retain, the talent. And I would suggest to take a big leap of faith in them and make sure that you are keeping touch in them, giving that continuous engagement, support, executive support, but also, trying to build that community around them so that they can exchange ideas more cross-functionally, and also, when times are tough, and it's going to be really tough, to, really propel the organization, forward. And I think that's probably how you're probably going to be able to attract and maintain, talent around innovation in a more sustainable way.
I remember when I was taking exams, I'm an actuary, when I was taking exams, that community of people who's learning with you,
Right.
that really resonates
Really
with me,
powerful.
right? We're all learning together.
It's you don't want to feel lonely.
Yeah.
And you want that kind of peer-to-peer support, and you want that, that feeling in terms of your leadership is actually supporting you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well,
Robin, how about you?
Yeah, adding on this, and I fully agree with what you have said, is I'm very excited about the diversity of the value chain of an insurer. Being it, you can have the retail, B2C, online or direct business. You have the commercial lines business, which is truly global, where you are basically exposed to any industry. At the back end, you have the asset management working directly with the capital markets. And I think that this diversity and excitement of the value chain, not everyone is familiar with. So I think, and relating to this, it's two steps. The first one, being more active in promoting this kind of diversity you have in the insurance value chain. And I'm honest, when I staff people for projects, especially consultants at the entry level, I really have to often have these conversations and to tell how exciting it can be in insurance. And luckily, most of them actually stay and like the insurance industry then.
Or you're a great persuader.
Yeah.
But then the second step comes,
Right.
you must deliver on the promise.
Of course, yes.
And I think from an insurer perspective, this could be to really enable cross-linear, cross-functional, global careers, to step a little bit away from this very linear, classical underwriting careers, to be more cross lines of business, cross-industry, across the globe, to allow for earlier, quicker promotions or just opportunities also to match people's individual life priorities. I think this is then the first step to gain talent and the second then to retain talent.
Right. Yeah, that resonates really well. Also, just again, as an actuary, rotational programs are something that many companies have. And it's great when you see that more broadly at a company. It's when you look at people, they credit a lot of that experience, that diverse experience, and being able to make impact and have a fulfilling career, right? So not just for themselves, but how they can see that they're making a difference to the purpose again.
And it makes an absolute difference in terms of the collaboration between the different silos and functions.
Mm-hmm. You can relate to each other better.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, if you're like me, I feel our future is in good hands. And I encourage you to read the papers if you haven't. And of course, the honorees here, but also the other 10 papers. The caliber was really excellent, thought-provoking. As mentors, we're tasked with judging these, and it was a really difficult selection because the thought process is just really good. So please do take time to evaluate those and see what you can apply in your own space and carry forward. What you hear a lot about with these ideas, it takes collaboration, not just within a company, but across the industry. So I hope that you will take those up and have the dialogue, whatever that follow-up may be for you. And in closing, I just want to thank everyone again. Congratulations to our honorees, Salim, our winner of this year's Leaders of Tomorrow program, and many thanks to all who've made the program possible, the IIS, all the support staff with the IIS and RGA as well, and of course, the mentors and mentees. We look forward to working with you again in the future. Thanks so much.